Look at the front of your house. If it was built before 1950, the main windows face the street. The front door faces the street. The living room faces the street. And the garden, the private space, is at the back, hidden from view. This is not coincidence. It is not convention. It is not because Victorian builders liked the idea of looking out at passing traffic. It is a passive solar heating and ventilation system that has been built into British residential streets for over 150 years, and almost nobody who lives in one of these houses knows it is there. The orientation of a Victorian terrace, the precise angle it faces relative to the sun, the placement of its windows, the depth of its rooms, the position of its chimney stacks was calculated to do three things simultaneously: to capture morning light, to distribute heat through the house without mechanical assistance, and to ensure that the prevailing southwesterly wind, the dominant wind direction across most of England, moved through the building in a way that prevented moisture accumulation and structural decay. When post-war planners and developers stopped following these principles, they did not announce what they were abandoning. They simply built houses that face whichever direction the plot dictated, with windows sized for cost rather than solar gain, with no consideration of the relationship between the front of the house and the sun's path across the sky. The result is a generation of British homes that are colder in winter, darker throughout the year, and more expensive to heat than they needed to be. Not because the technology does not exist to do better, because the knowledge of how to orient a building correctly was embedded in Victorian building practice and was never written down, never taught, and never passed on when the practice changed. This is what they forgot to tell you about the house you live in. If you are new here, hit subscribe now. Every week, British Home Secrets reveals the knowledge they buried, built specifically for UK homes. Now let us get into this. The first principle is solar orientation. In Britain, the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. In winter, the sun's path is low across the southern sky, and it never gets far above the horizon. In summer, the path is higher, but the critical heating months are October through March, when every degree of passive solar gain matters. A Victorian terrace built on a street that runs roughly east to west has its front elevation facing south or close to south. This is not always exact, streets are not always perfectly aligned, but across thousands of Victorian developments in British cities, the dominant pattern is a front elevation with significant southward exposure. A south-facing front elevation in winter receives direct sunlight for the maximum possible number of hours each day. The large sash windows of a Victorian front room, typically occupying 30 to 40% of the front elevation, admit that winter sunlight directly into the principal living space. The thermal mass of the solid brick walls and the dense plaster inside absorbs the heat, and the house retains that warmth after the sun sets in a way that a modern cavity wall house with its thinner thermal mass cannot replicate. Victorian builders did not have the language of passive solar design. They did not use the phrase solar gain, but they built on east-west streets by default, placed the main rooms at the front, and sized the front windows generously, because experience across generations told them this was how you built a house that stayed warm without burning through coal. The second principle is the relationship between the street and the prevailing wind. The dominant wind direction across England is from the southwest. A house with its front facing southwest and its back facing northeast presents its narrowest elevation to the prevailing wind. Less wind resistance, less wind-driven rain penetration on the main facade, less heat loss through wind-driven convection on the walls most exposed to the prevailing weather. Victorian terraces built perpendicular to the prevailing wind direction are also self-sheltering. The house to your left and the house to your right provide natural windbreaks for your own building. The party walls, which extend the full height of the house, block the lateral movement of cold wind along the facade. The result is a microclimate within the terrace that is measurably warmer and less wind-exposed than any of the individual houses would be if they stood alone. This is why Victorian terraces in exposed northern towns, in Yorkshire, in Lancashire, in the coalfield communities of Durham and Northumberland, stay warmer than their thermal specifications suggest they should. The orientation and the mutual shelter of the terrace is doing work that no insulation product was installed to do. There is a second wind-related principle that Victorian builders understood, and that is almost completely absent from modern housing. The back garden of a Victorian terrace is enclosed on three sides: by the rear wall of the house, by the party wall fences on each side, and by the rear wall or fence of the garden. This enclosure creates a sheltered outdoor microclimate that is typically 2 to 3 degrees warmer than the open street. In Victorian terraces in northern England, this rear garden microclimate allowed fruit trees, vegetable growing, and outdoor activity in months when exposed gardens in equivalent climates would be too cold. When modern estates replaced terraces with detached houses on open plots, this enclosed rear microclimate disappeared. The detached house stands in open ground on all sides. Wind moves around it freely. The garden is exposed. The thermal benefit of the Victorian terrace form, both indoors and outdoors, was eliminated by a planning preference for detached ownership without any acknowledgement of what was being lost in thermal terms. The third principle is room depth and light penetration. Victorian rooms are deep. A typical Victorian front reception room is between 4 and 5 meters from the front window to the rear wall. A modern room in an equivalent-sized house is often shallower, 3 to 3.5 meters, because modern builders prioritize room count over room depth. The depth of a Victorian room is not arbitrary. A room 4 to 5 meters deep, with a south-facing sash window of adequate size, allows winter sunlight to penetrate to the rear wall of the room for several hours each day. This penetration has two effects. It illuminates the rear of the room without artificial light, and it heats the rear wall, the internal wall, which then radiates that warmth back into the space after the direct sun has moved on. A shallower room with a smaller window creates a brighter front section and a dark, cold rear section. The distribution of light and warmth is uneven. You compensate with artificial lighting in the rear and additional heating in the corners. Both cost money. Neither was necessary if the room had been built to the correct depth for its orientation. The fourth principle is the chimney stack as a thermal regulator. Victorian chimney stacks are positioned on party walls, the walls shared between two houses, rather than on external walls. This is not primarily an aesthetic decision. It is a thermal decision. A chimney stack on a party wall sits at the heart of the house, equidistant from all the main rooms. As the flue heats up from the fire below, it radiates warmth laterally into every room that shares a wall with the chimney stack. The party wall itself, heated by two chimney stacks from the houses on either side, becomes a thermal store that releases heat slowly through the night. A chimney on an external wall, which appears in some late Victorian and Edwardian properties, sends heat outward through the external face. The gain to the room is reduced. The heat that should be staying inside the house is conducting through the external brick and dissipating into the street. When central heating replaced fireplaces in the 1960s and 70s, the chimney stacks were retained, but the flues were sealed. The thermal regulation function was lost. The party walls, no longer heated from within, became cold bridges instead of heat stores. The houses did not immediately become colder. They became colder slowly, over decades, as the thermal behavior that the chimney stack had provided was not replaced by anything equivalent. There is one more dimension to the chimney stack that is rarely mentioned. In a Victorian terrace where every house has a coal fire burning in the evening, the combined heat output of an entire street of chimney stacks creates a local atmospheric effect. The warm exhaust, rising from dozens of closely spaced stacks, creates an upward convection current that draws cold air in from ground level at the periphery of the terrace and replaces it with warmer air from the street-level microclimate created by the buildings themselves. This is not a significant heating effect in energy terms, but it is a measurable contribution to the warmth of the street environment that was present in Victorian urban neighbourhoods and is entirely absent from modern suburban estates. Victorian working-class streets in Yorkshire and Lancashire were noticeably warmer at street level during winter evenings than the surrounding open countryside. The terrace form and the collective chimney output created this effect together. Neither one created it alone. When the coal fires were replaced by central heating and the chimneys were sealed, this street-level thermal effect disappeared. The streets became colder. The residents attributed this to climate. The actual cause was the loss of a distributed heat system that no one had designed deliberately and no one noticed when it stopped. The fifth principle is what we built instead. Post-war, British housing was built primarily on the principle of plot efficiency. How many houses can be fitted onto a given area of land? The answer to that question does not involve asking which direction the sun rises. It involves fitting units to a grid, turning some of them to face whatever direction the road happens to run, and building each unit as an independent thermal envelope rather than as part of a mutually sheltering terrace. The result is estates where some houses face south and stay warm, and adjacent houses facing north are cold and dark by design. Where individual detached or semi-detached properties lose the shelter effect of the Victorian terrace and stand exposed to wind on all sides. Where rooms are sized for minimum area standards rather than for solar penetration depth, and where windows are sized for cost and uniformity rather than for the specific orientation of each elevation. The energy performance gap between a well-oriented Victorian terrace and a poorly oriented post-war detached house is not explained entirely by insulation or glazing specification. A significant portion of it is explained by orientation and by the loss of the passive systems that Victorian builders embedded into the street layout without ever writing them down. This matters today for one practical reason. If you own or rent a Victorian terrace, you own or rent a building that contains passive solar and wind management systems that are still functioning. The south-facing front room is still capturing winter sun. The party walls are still providing mutual shelter. The room depth is still distributing light to the rear wall. None of these systems require maintenance. None of them cost money to operate. All of them are working right now, today, in exactly the way they were designed to work. What they require is not to be interrupted. The two most common interruptions are external insulation on the front elevation and replacement of the original sash windows with modern double-glazed units that are smaller than the originals. External insulation on a south-facing Victorian front elevation adds thermal mass to the wall, but it also adds thickness to the window reveals, which reduces the angle at which winter sunlight can enter the room. A window in a thicker wall admits less winter sun than the same window in a thinner wall. The passive solar gain that the Victorian builder designed in is partially negated by the insulation that was intended to improve efficiency. Replacement sash windows in Victorian properties are frequently installed at a smaller size than the originals because the frame system of modern units requires more frame area and less glass area for the same overall opening size. Less glass means less solar gain. The room that previously admitted winter sun to the rear wall now admits winter sun to the midpoint. The thermal benefit is reduced. The energy saving from the double glazing does not always compensate for the solar gain lost by the smaller glass area. The informed Victorian homeowner understands these trade-offs before making decisions about their front elevation. They know that their south-facing windows are not just windows. They are the intake of a passive heating system that has been working since the house was built. And they treat any modification to that elevation with the same care they would give to any other component of a system they want to preserve. You now know that Victorian terraces were oriented deliberately to face the prevailing sun and shelter from the prevailing wind. You know that room depth was designed for solar penetration, not just for floor area. You know that chimney stacks on party walls were thermal regulators that heated every room simultaneously. You know that the terrace form itself creates a microclimate that is warmer than any of its individual houses would be standing alone. And you know that modern interventions on south-facing elevations, including external insulation and smaller replacement windows, can reduce the solar gain that the Victorian builder designed in without those reductions being accounted for in the energy calculations used to justify the interventions. Look at your front elevation. If it faces south or southwest, the sun is doing work for you every winter day. If your front room is cold in winter, despite your heating running, stand in it on a clear day in December at noon and observe where the light falls. If it reaches the rear wall, your windows are working as the Victorian builder designed. If it stops at the midpoint of the room, something has changed. Either the window size, the window reveal depth from insulation, or the orientation of the room itself relative to the street. The Victorian house is not cold because it is old. It is cold when the systems the Victorian builder designed have been modified by people who did not understand what those systems were doing. Share this video with anyone who has been quoted for external wall insulation on a Victorian terrace. This is British Home Secrets. We find the knowledge they buried and we give it back to the people who need it. Subscribe, because there is a lot more where this came from.